Okay, hey guys. So I got a new camera, and it's in a spot that I'm not really used to, and this is the only way I can figure out how to angle it, and it might fall in the middle of this. So let's just deal with it. So the last video that we had, we were kind of introducing some of the things that we were going to talk about in our final Eucharist talk. I want to go back and slightly recap what happened in Egypt with Moses when the very first rules of Passover were established. So the rules that were given by Moses was take an unblemished lamb, drain the blood, use a hyssop branch, mark the doorpost. Everyone in the house was to consume the lamb. No bones of the lamb were to be broken, and everyone in the house had to participate in the feast. Let me just move this over. Sorry, this is a little awkward. So during the Passover meal, 4 cups of wine were consumed. The final cup, so they drink a cup, drink a cup, drink a cup, and then the final 4th cup is the cup of the covenant, the cup of the family bond. In between the 3rd and 4th cup, the Jewish people would sing what was called the Great Hallel. It comes from Psalms 113 and 118. So if you think about us in Mass, we'll do the readings and then we sing the responsorial psalm, which always comes from the book of Psalms, written by David. So the Jewish people would drink a glass of wine, drink a glass of wine, drink a glass of wine, sing the Great Hallel, and then drink the final glass, which was the cup of the covenant. The final cup of wine was the cup of the covenant. Now, the Passover meal, if you'll remember, that's what the Last Supper was. That was the meal that Jesus was celebrating with his apostles right before he died. So, as we talked about in the book of Daniel, Daniel predicted when the Messiah was going to be born during the Roman Empire. And because of the predictions in the book of Daniel, that's why Jesus' birth in Bethlehem, which Bethlehem also means house of bread, which I think is so cute. Like, God's like so funny, house of bread. Anyway, maybe you guys don't think it's funny. But because of the book of Daniel, the predictions, Herod was kind of flipping out. He was the king at the time. He did all of his shenanigans of, like killing babies so that his kingdom wouldn't be lost. In Jesus' ministry, he worked a lot of miracles. He gained a lot of followers. And then he delivers what's called the Bread of Life Discourse, which is, you can read this in John chapter 6. It's just called the Bread of Life Discourse. If you want to read it, you can even just type in Google Bread of Life Discourse, and this will pop up. But some of the things that Jesus said during his ministry, during this Bread of Life Discourse was, I am the bread of life. I will give you my flesh to eat, and whoever eats my flesh, whoever eats this bread, will live forever. The Jews who had been following him and listening to this, including his apostles, were kind of blown away. They were just like, what is this guy saying? He's crazy. Can he really be telling us to eat his flesh? Is he condoning cannibalism? And it caused a little bit of an uproar. It caused people to stop following him. But why did Jesus use these words? What was he saying? There's a reason. He didn't say it symbolically. He didn't say it not meaning eat my flesh, because why would he say those words and not mean them and have all of these followers leave? So at the Passover meal, the Last Supper that Jesus was celebrating with his apostles, we're going to go through each gospel and the scriptures surrounding the Last Supper, when he goes to the garden, and when he gets crucified. We're going to start with the first gospel, which is Matthew. This is Matthew 26:19. And what it says is, I tell you, from now on, I shall not drink the fruit of the vine until the day when I drink it with you new in the kingdom of my Father. Then after singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. So what Jesus just said, I will not drink with you until I am in the kingdom with my Father. They sang a song and they left. So just as I already told you with the Jewish Passover meals, they drink the 3 cups of wine, they sing the song, and then they drink the final cup. So they did not drink the final cup yet. They drank, and they sang the song, and they left. When they're they leave that upper room where they were celebrating Passover, the Last Supper, and they go to the garden. And Matthew 26, verse 39 says, talking about Jesus, he advanced a little bit and fell prostrate in prayer, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." So what cup is he talking about? He's talking about that final cup of the new covenant. When he gets crucified, when he's on the cross, Matthew 27, verse 48 says, immediately one of them ran to get a sponge. He soaked it in wine and putting it on a reed, gave it to him to drink. So Jesus drinks the last bit of wine and then he dies. Now, moving on to the book of Mark, the exact same thing happens. While they are in the upper room celebrating the Last Supper, it says, then after singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. This is Mark 4:26. Mark 14:26, I'm sorry. Mark 14:36 says, exactly like it did in the prior gospel, he advanced a little and fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. He said, Abba, Father, all things are possible to you. Take this cup away from me. What cup is he talking about? That final cup that gets consumed after they sing the hymn during Passover. Mark 15, verse 36, talking about when Jesus is on the cross, he is crucified, says, one of them soaked a sponge with wine, put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. Now, if these were minor details that Jesus was dying and they were giving him something to drink, it would not have been bothered to be mentioned in the Gospels. One of the things that we need to realize about this time period is they had to handwrite everything. Everything was handwritten. So they weren't writing flowery things in there that didn't serve a purpose. If they are putting down in here, they drank at the Last Supper, sang a song, and left, there's a reason that they're noting when they left. If they're saying, Jesus prayed that a cup be taken away from him, why? If they're saying that they soaked a sponge with wine and gave it to Jesus on the cross to drink so that he has his final drink right before he dies, why? In Luke, the next gospel, Luke 22:42, one of the things it says is, this is in the garden, Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me, still not my will but yours be done. In Luke 24 verses 30, it says, and it happened that while he was at table with them, so this is at the Last Supper, he took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to them, and their eyes were opened. So if Jesus is sitting at the table with them, and it is being referenced that while he was having this final meal with his apostles, their eyes were open, what does that mean? Now, John is my favorite gospel. It's the final gospel, and it's also the last one written. It was written about 50 years after Christ's death. And so if you have Jesus rise from the dead, 50 years later, a bunch of heresies are already popping up. And heresies are basically just, they're straying away from the truth. It's not the truth, not what was meant to be. So John writes his gospel. He's basically our clarifier. He's going through and he's clearing up a lot of the heresies that are coming out. Now, so while Jesus was on the cross, about to die, John 19, verse 29 says, Jesus said, I thirst. There was a vessel filled with common wine, so they put a sponge soaked in wine on a sprig of hyssop. I want you to take note of that, on a sprig of hyssop, and put it up to his mouth. When Jesus had taken the wine, he said, it is finished. And bowing his head, he handed over his spirit and dies. Since it was the Sabbath, the crucified's legs were broken, but Jesus was already dead, so his legs were not broken. But instead, a lance was thrust into the side of Jesus, and immediately blood and water flowed out. So we get a little bit different from John. What we get is a sprig of hyssop, very specific. Why a sprig of hyssop was used to hold the wine up to Jesus' mouth when he was being crucified. It was the Sabbath. His legs were not broken because he was already dead. So no bones were broken. What is that hearkening back to? And then it says that he was stabbed in the side and blood and water flowed out. So what this should be, right at the beginning of this talk, I had said we recapped the Passover. the very first Passover, a sprig of hyssop is what the Jews had to use to mark their doorpost with. It had to be a hyssop branch. Second, the lamb that was sacrificed, his bones were not to be broken. And John is noting here that no bones of Jesus's were broken. Now, these are immensely important. Last week we talked about the Tamid sacrifices. The Tamid sacrifices were the ones, there's a sacrifice in the morning and a sacrifice in the evening. Jesus died at 3 p.m. The Tamid sacrifice of the lambs was 3 p.m. And one of the things that would be noted in Jewish cultures is at 3 p.m. you could hear the lambs in the temple screaming. You could hear them crying because they were being sacrificed. So at the moment that Jesus is dying, the lambs are in the background screaming. Jesus dies, he gets stabbed in the side, and blood and water flow out. In the temple, what would happen when they would sacrifice the lambs is they would drain the blood out, and the blood would actually run out the side of the temple mixed with water. So this is something that is pointing at the Jews. The sacrifice has been made. The final sacrifice has been made. The final cup of Passover has been drank, and the final sacrifice has been made. Now, same thing as we did last time. I'm attaching in here your list of questions. Answer them, and if you have any questions, then we're going to be moving on from here next week. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and you guys should be really proud of me because my videos are so short now. Have a good week.